For the first years of the Rebbe's Nasius, the Rebbe would Farbrengen on Pesach after the Seder. So as you can imagine, it wasn't a early Farbrengen. And a lot of the insights that we have on that Gada from the Rebbe are from those Farbrengens. One of the Farbrengens in which the Rebbe really brought together many ideas and, asked many questions and brought it into one theme is the Farbrengen that we're learning together here. And that is the Farbrengen of Tafshin Chaf Vav. So a lot of the Farbrengen made it into the Sicha, but when you go into the unedited version, you see, as he says over here, that they added a few points. So we're going to try to add a few points that didn't make it into the Farbrengen. Interesting that when it goes through, it actually will show you if it didn't make it in to the Farbrengen. So all these ha'aris made it in. And over here in our 22, we see that something that didn't make it in. Basically, over there, the Rebbe was talking about that according to the Nusach Haggadah, Minhag Shenagu Kol Yisrael Mideres Elishainim, you start from Hey Lachman. And the Rebbe says that wherever you start says a lot. Just like on Shabbos B'leishis, we say V'mishtaltzach Shabbos B'leishis, or V'mishpantain, the way you bend yourself in, the way you stand in, so too will affect the whole year. And then the Rebbe went on to say something. I'm just looking for it, but the Rebbe basically says that's why we see that the Rabbeim were makbid zewatam. This is the reason why Rabbi Sicha would start in the B'yodei Agada from Heilachman, even though there's things to say about Kiddush, because the B'yodei Rabbeim on the Agada were mitzad inyan v'gadat alabincha, and that starts by Heilachman. So that was another point that the Rebbe said at the Farbrengen. Then the Rebbe continues. It's actually one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most incredible sichas. Has so many questions across the whole Agada answer. Then another Nakuda the Rebbe talks about in the context of if the Yidden would be meshubed, would be slaved based on their whole entity, you would need a special pa'ula, a bazundet uftu, a special accomplishment to take them out of the mindset of slavery. But because they became be'etzem becharen, like the Maral says, and only because exeris b'dis bin absarim did they become avadim, but by default they're free. So the moment the time runs out, l'chuda, they should become batal right away. That was part of the question of the Rebbe. And the Rebbe says, like Galus Baba, we see that there was a set time of 70 years, and when the time finished, they went out. Taka the Geula was through Abbas of Adam, through Kairish. But Yitzias Mitzrayim was by Hashem. Then the Rebbe continues, and in footnote 57, about V'hishamda, and the Rebbe says V'hishamda is the haftacha, is the promise. And according to Kabbalah, that refers to Sfiras HaMalchus, which is called Kais Yeshuos, and that's why you pick up the Kais, because that's the idea of bring Aliyas HaMalchus, bringing the Malchus back. So even the Kabbalah, that you remember, Malchus has to go back to the original 6 spheres to get from there the light that it needs and bring it into the lower world. We had a share on this a few months ago, where the Rebbe spoke about Malchus, and we kind of explored what Malchus is according to Chassidus. The Malchus, specifically, when we say Malchus without a title, it's usually referring to Malchus Datzilus, and it has to go up to the Zod, to the 6 spheres, and it could then bring it down into Biyah. Fine. Then the Rebbe was talking about the question he asked on Behiv Shamda, why should we think of that? Why should the anti-Semites be successful? And the Rebbe then said, Mikol Shekain, how much more so from what it says in Medrash, that the Medrash says if the Goyim knew how much the Beis Hamikdash assists them, they would surround it with guards to watch it, because the Beis Hamikdash meant so much. And if that's something like the Beis Hamikdash, which is secondary to Bnei Yisrael, because it's just a means for the Yid to bring closer to the Karban to Hashem, how much more so the Yid itself. It's a powerful idea that it says, if the Goyim knew how much they are getting through the fact that there are Yidden in this world, they wouldn't do anything. So how much more so? Why should the Goyim be successful? What's the reason that we would think would be successful? Then the Rebbe continues and says, especially that everything in the world is created for the Yidden, B'reishis B'shvil Yisrael, and the whole world is for the Litzavis Lazet to take care of this, to help the Yidden. And the reason why the Goyim don't know about it and the Yidden don't necessarily feel it is there should be a Bechira, but it doesn't change the truth. And the saving, Hashem saving us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Matzilenu, is by default. What's the big Chiddush? It can't be any other way. The Rebbe once said, Adarabah. If you're looking for a reason, it's not how the Yidden are saved, but the mere fact of Umas Ha'ilam, which come from Gimel Klippus Atmes, that Ein Lan Tev Klal, they have nothing good. How could you have that in the world of Hashem? That's the question, not how the Yiddish survives. Even Klippas Noiga, which has a mixture of Tev and Ra, you could ask, how could there be such a thing in this world, in a world that Hashem's Tachlis HaToiv? And the answer is that Ra came in this world because Hashem wanted Iskafia and Ishapcha. So that's the question, not how the Yid is saved. That's not the question. Okay, then footnote 71. Over there, the Rebbe is talking about L'chaper al chol avei neseinu, and what's the big chiddush over there, and why does he dafka choose the idea of L'chaper avei neseinu? There was many other things that happened in the Beis Hamikdash. And the Rebbe continued and said, it's not the most important part. The Iker Kapada was not through Karbanis, but through Tshuva. And Tshuva is believed, and in the heart, you don't need the Beis Hamikdash. You could have the highest level of Tshuva. So that's the big chiddush of the Beis Hamikdash, L'chaper al chol avei neseinu. Then in footnote 80, that was talking about, because the Yidden went up with Chush Gadol like Hashem promised, how could there be poverty? And this is part of the answer already. Now, you can't say that, there's many promises that were given from Hashem, but weren't brought down into this world, like you find by Yaakov, even though he was promised that he would come back in peace. Yaakov Vayiram Ma'od, he was worried. Shema Yignam Achet, maybe the sin the Chet would cause issues, because over here it's talking about something that was already brought into this world, Geula, and it should have stayed like this forever. It's not something that wasn't downloaded into this world. Then the Rebbe continues and says, the mitzvah Haggadah B'leil HaSeder is Abar Banim. And by the Shulchan HaSeder, you don't only have the Chacham, you have the Rasha and the other kids. And it's hard to understand. We know that the Shaim in that generation weren't redeemed. So because there was no Deshaim, how suddenly do you have a Ben Rasha by Bnei Yisrael? And the Rebbe went on to explain in the part that didn't make it in. The Rebbe goes like this. There shouldn't be, not only shouldn't there be a Rasha, there shouldn't be a Tam and a Shnei de Elisha. Why? Because, very interesting point, this is a shir on itself, that the Chidush, the incredible thing that happened when the Yidden came out of Mitzrayim and when Matan Torah was not the fact that they got Amunah, because Amunah, Avram Avinu is Reish Amunah. He's the head of Amunah. He's the first Maimon. Reish L'cholam Amin. And even Mizman HaGolus, in the time of the exile in Mitzrayim, we know that they were redeemed because of B'schus HaEmunah. So what was the Chiddush of Matan Torah? The Chiddush of Matan Torah in the time wasn't Amunah. That they already had. What thing was added to Bnei Yisrael? Havana v'asaga, understanding. Chabad. And not only understanding, but even more, the ear, they were able to see by Har Sinai. And because they had a situation of seeing Elikus, how is it possible there should be a Tamash Nidei Elishal? How much more so a Rasha? Very powerful idea. Like a side point, but like this is a shir on itself. What was accomplished by Matan Torah, not Amunah. What was accomplished by Matan Torah was Yediyah. And the Rebbe went on to say these questions that the person sits down by the Seder has, they are huge questions, and therefore you have to remove the bilbul. And then the Rebbe went on to, and why it causes a bilbul, why? Because you're telling the person to sit there chedos. So am I free or am I not free? And the Rebbe went on and just as a side point that therefore Amidas Halal B'leil Seder you have to sit, even though Amidas Halal saying Halal the whole year, even by Ma'ariv of Pesach has to be standing, but over here you're doing it like a person of Chedos. And the Rebbe starts answering, and that's called Dichvin, called Ditzrich, the fact that there's Metzius Aniyim, and the fact that Shata Avdin is we're still in Galus, because Avasana not only were in Mitzrayim, but are in Mitzrayim. The Yidden didn't have a total Yitzias Mitzrayim, and that's, the Rebbe goes and says, that's why we say Hey Lachma, not Ki Hey Lachma, we should say it's similar. It's like the bread. Why are we saying this is the bread? Because we're not talking about the similar bread that Achla son of Adam Mitzrayim, but this is the bread. This is the reason the kol dichvin yeseviyechol. That's why there's dichvin, and that's why I shot Avdin, because we're still hey lachma. This is the bread that we're eating in Mitzrayim, because we still didn't have a gula. And then it goes and says that's why we say that we're looking forward to the next step, which is Lashon Haba Aradi Sol B'nei Chayim. And Levi says, and how will we accomplish this Ben Chayim? Through the fact that lachma diacholo, we're going to eat it, digest it, like the Tanya explains in Parakeh, that's becoming one with you. The food becomes one. That the revelation of above is going to go into your pneumius, like matzah. That the Chassidus explains that matzah you're literally eating, unlike other mitzvahs, you're shaking, you're touching. Over here, it's becoming part of you. And the famous idea that Chazal say that a child cannot call out their father, in other words, doesn't have intelligence until they eat grain, because grain is the idea of internalizing. Even though the knowledge you need to call out father is not major intelligence, it's anius, but nevertheless, it permeates everything of you, and that's why you need bread in order for it to totally permeate from you, and then you could achieve the ultimate shleimus in it. Okay, then we continue. The Rebbe talks about the whole answer that we learned. And then 93.93, the Rebbe says, we know what the Chazal say that Hashem gave Avram Avinu the choice. Do you choose Gehenim for your children or Galus? And Avram, or according to other opinion, Hashem chose Galus and Makim Gehenim. Either Avram chose it or Avram didn't want to make the choice, and Hashem made the choice. And why did they choose it? Because with Yisur and Kalim, with light Yisurim in this world, we save ourselves from harsh judgment in the Olam Haba. And the mashal that's given in Tanya is that down here below, when you see the shadow move a foot, up there below, it means the clouds moved thousands of miles, or that the sun rather moved thousands of miles. So in this world, you only get a small amount of pain compared to what you get up there. In other words, this world is micro compared to what you would get the macro up there. And Rebbe went on to say, especially by Yidden, Bnei Malachim Heim, and Bnei Malachim meaning that even the smallest amount of effort is pain. So much so, like the Gemara says in Erchin, what is Yisurin? Yisurin is even having to stick your hand into your pocket to take 3 coins and you find only 2. What's the big deal? Because then you have to stick your hand in again and get the 3rd one. So that's the amount of tircha that a yid shouldn't have to have. And therefore, everything beyond that is a big deal. Okay. Fine. Page number 108. What's 108? The question that we asked, how is it possible that the Yidden were so deep into the Mitzrayim that they couldn't go out? And therefore the Baal Haggadah says, Vayarei Sanu, they made us bad. They made us Ro'im. That's why it says, not Vayarei Lanu to us, but they made us bad. They caused such an evil. And according to this, the Rebbe says, the Seder Vayarei Sanu Mitzrayim Vayitna Aleina Veda Kasha is not going from light to heavy, but from heavy to light. Because the Vayarei Sanu was worse than the torture they gave us. Like it says, Hamachti l'adam, someone that caused a yid to sin is even worse than killing him. Because if you kill him, you kill him elam hazeh. Machti, if you cause him to sin, it's in elam hazeh and elam haba. So you're going to now kaved el hakal. Then the Rebbe continued saying, the mitzvim caused such a ra that wasn't shaykh, that the Yidden couldn't relate to from themselves. In other words, it wasn't the kind of ra that they had to deal with in Galus Mitzrayim. They shouldn't have even gone there. And the Rebbe says this is similar to what we say on Yom Kippur, and Al-Chet Shechatan Lefanecha B'Yetzer Hara. And the question is, what's the big chiddush? Well, every sin that you do is with the Yetzer Hara. Every Aveda that you do. And the Rebbe, and the famous explanation that's given, and the Rebbe says it is because all the other sins come from the Yetzer Hara, the way the Yetzer Hara is designed. That's in its modus operandi. That's the way the Yetzer Hara works. But the chait of Yetzer Hara is when you're making the Yetzer Hara do even things that the Yetzer Hara, you're getting the Yetzer Hara so geared up that you're getting it to do stuff that wasn't in the plan. It wasn't in the strategy. It wasn't the kind of failures or the struggles that you were meant to go through in your life. Okay, that's the last footnote that I see that didn't make it into Farbrengen. And Hatzlacha Rabbi, and just to say that I gave a shir on this Sicha to Mekaravim, and it's an incredible Sicha. Like if you want to kind of really give the core of the Seder, you're bringing questions across, but there's one answer for everything. It's a very, very powerful shir material, and obviously for ourselves.